Hello, dobry dzień, and hey up! I'm starting this video at the UK National Railway Museum in York, because when Robert Stephenson built the legendary rocket in 1829, kick-starting a railway revolution around the globe, he can hardly have imagined what it would lead to. Fast forward to the 1980s, and France says, "We are France, we can make a better train than this rocket." And then Germany says, "We are Germany, we can make a better train than this rocket." And then the Soviet Union says, "We are Soviet Union, we put the rocket on train." I've come to the Muzej Żeleznych Dróg Rosji, the National Railway Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. Housed in a former depot, the museum has a collection of more than 100 locomotives, carriages and wagons. I mean, let's be fair, you can get absolutely off your face on trains in here if that's what you want. There are some beautiful exhibits, including the famous Krasnaya Strela, the sleeper train that leaves St. Petersburg for Moscow every night with patriotic music pumping from the platform. But to be totally honest with you, apart from the insane number of wheels on this diesel locomotive, it's all a little bit, well, normal. This is Russia. I was expecting crazy, and there's nothing in here that's really crazy. Oh no, wait. I knew there'd be something. The RT-23 nuclear missile train is every cliché you ever learned about crazy evil Russians from the James Bond films. And from the current Russian president. It was born during the Cold War, and to explain more about that, we're going to go back to York for a moment. The Cold War was a time in history when the world's two superpowers, the US and the USSR, decided that the best way to avoid all-out nuclear war was to build huge numbers of nuclear warheads and then try not to fire them at each other. No, I still don't know how it worked either, but somehow it did. Both sides kept the majority of their nuclear missiles in either submarines or secure underground silos. But at the dawn of the 1980s, the Soviets started to plan something new, a nuclear warhead that would be mobile on land. Over the next decade, the USSR built a total of 12 trains, each carrying 3 missiles. This mobility made the missiles more vulnerable in some ways, but it also made them much harder to track. The enemy would never really know where all of them were. And the plan kind of worked, or at least the Americans were sufficiently spooked that they started to develop their own equivalent. This prototype car was built in 1990, and they began testing it, but for reasons that I'll explain in a bit, it was never deployed, and it's now preserved at the National Museum of the US Air Force in Ohio. The American design followed the Soviet example by fitting a missile inside what looks like a regular railway wagon, and this is a regular railway wagon, as long as you don't notice the false doors or the reinforced steel wheels. Oh, and for anyone who is still wondering, the missile would be folded down into the vehicle, so it doesn't accidentally destroy a city every time the train goes under a bridge. If an attack had ever been ordered, the idea was that the train would stop, send out a claw to move any overhead power lines out of the way, and pop open its roof. A powder charge would then launch the missile 20 meters into the air before the rockets ignited. This helped to avoid frying the train in the process. Luckily, the order never came. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and with nuclear Armageddon becoming slightly less of a threat, the US retired its prototype. Russia eventually decommissioned its last RT-23 in 2005. It remains the only nuclear missile train ever to go into service, so far, and I think we can all be happy that what is, in human terms at least, the worst train ever built is now nothing more than a museum piece. If you'd like to visit the Russian Railway Museum and enjoy its enormous collection of mostly much nicer exhibits, you'll find it right next to Baltysky Station in St. Petersburg. An adult entry ticket costs 300 rubles, or about €4.20. Russia has a special rule that allows foreign citizens to visit St. Petersburg without a visa for up to 72 hours. Google it if you're interested. But no matter how much you wanted to be a train driver when you were 6, please try not to spend all 72 of them in one place.